about movies for IndieWire, and it's my great pleasure to introduce filmmakers behind Elvis, re-recording mixer Andy Nelson, photography Andy Walker, production designer, costume designer, and producer, actor Butler. Producer and director Baz Luhrmann.
So that's what it feels like, right? I don't usually used to do that bit.
So, Baz, I know you've talked about the fact that this movie is something you've been thinking about one way or another for, I think, over 10 years now. So what was the thing that finally unlocked it for you and was sort of the starting point for this being a real movie?
Well, I've said it before, but the starting point with it is that I never really ever looked at it as a biopic, because I just think the life of Elvis is, first of all, it's so impossible to imagine anyone lived that life in such a short time. And he almost, whatever your conception of God is a great dramatist, because he managed to make a 3-act life story that happens to also reflect 3 of the most important acts in American history, and that is the 50s and the 60s and the 70s. And I was thinking how those, something like an Amadeus, yes, is it deeply rooted in Mozart's life? Do we all like Mozart's music? Some do, some don't. But what it's really about is a bigger idea. It's really about jealousy. And yet we come to understand the humanity of Mozart through that. So I was looking for us to make something like that. And it was only when I started to get some known but a lot of unknown information about this character, Colonel Tom Parker, never Colonel, never Tom, never Parker. I know it's not a spoiler alert. Andreas Van Kook. And his whole background of running away and him being a snowman, pulling the wool over your eyes, you paying for it, you even know you're being worked over, but you kind of love it. And I thought, that's really out there in the world at the moment, that. And I just thought, now is the right time to make a film about the very great thing that is America, that is the new and the coming together and the layers of culture and people coming together and making the new and the soulful. And the other thing in America that can be great if it's in balance, and that is the cell or the, roll up or the big, but when the cell gets bigger than the soul, it's going to end in tragedy. So that was what was rattling around in my mind 10 years ago. No, actually only about, well, Gail's not here, she remembers. I went and saw her, I think, 10 years ago. But it took me about...
She came to see you, I think she said, you're not going to believe it, but 12 years ago was the first time. And in another Q&A where Mandy and we were with her, I think she said you told her the story basically exactly as it was, or it is now on screen 12 years ago. Told it to her.
I just have a very bad memory. So I don't really know what happened.
Well, obviously, a movie like this is going to live or die on whether you can find somebody who can actually play Elvis. And I remember when this movie was first announced, I thought, oh, poor Baz. Like, he's really...
Me too. I thought poor Baz too.
Because I just thought, where is he going to find someone who can sing like Elvis, who has the charisma that Elvis has, who the actor,
How do we go?
You know, and I mean, like many people, I loved Austin once upon a time in Hollywood. I've seen him on TV, all that kind of stuff, but nobody knew he had this in him.
Nope.
How did you know, and what was the process like of finding Austin?
Look, I made a rule that I would do all this work, and it meant that the studio was putting significant money into me living in Memphis and having an office in Graceland for 18 months, and I live these things. I don't do them quickly, and I don't do anything else. I'm very, as someone that was called today, very monogamous when it comes to projects. And so I was doing that. Secretly in the back of my mind, I thought, I made a rule though, I'm not doing it unless I find someone who can truly play Elvis, thinking, nah, that's never gonna happen, kind of, but maybe I will. I just sort of blocked it out of my head. I just went like, I just can't think about that, because how am I gonna do that? Could we do like a mocap version of Elvis? Or, I really was thinking the craziest things, right? And then I do workshops. One thing I really believe in is that auditions are not good for anyone, not good for me, not good for actors. And I come from an acting teaching background, so I do workshops, and anyone who comes into my space, I say, my job is to get you this, and the main way I can help you get this is to block out everyone else's vibe and say, you help me learn about this script. And I'll take a scene, and I go, when we walk out of here, you're gonna help me make this scene better, right? And I just work with them for a whole day. We do costume, and we do everything, So I started doing some of those workshops. And then there was some time, and look, then I get this tape, and actually I happened to check it the other day, because I thought, am I ever blowing what I saw in this videotape? Maybe Austin, you should tell that bit about the tape. Anyway, the tape happens, and pretty much when he walked in, he was already down the Elvis road, and I just, the workshop was meant to be a day, and then it was 2 days, and then it went on for a while. I think during the workshopping process, a few weeks in, I said, gee, Lightning, what part of the South is he from? And one of my guys said, oh, he's actually from Anaheim. I went, gee, that's not in the South, is it? And so I don't actually remember telling him got the job. I just remember we were on our way to Nashville at some point to record Elvis singing in the studio, which he'd never done before in his life. That's my memory. But I had this bad memory.
I remember it very differently. I remember 5 distinct months that we had together of exactly what you're saying. It was an experience like I've never had, as far as going from the first inception of the idea of a film through these 5 months of just exploration. And so it was beautiful, because in a normal audition, you have this feeling of like building a wooden ship at home and then bringing it in and going, look what I built. But with Baz, it was more, we were coming into the room together and building it together. And so we were trying things, and it was also a process of me figuring out if I could believe myself in this. And so we had these 5 months of reading the script together, and we would just read. We'd sit down and we'd read a scene, and then Baz would say, let me get a camera. He'd shoot some things, and we'd just try things.
And Mandy was there with me.
Mandy was there.
Like years before we did the film, and with her camera. And actually kind of Sam, and the editors were there. Like the end of the movie here, you saw there, where you see goes to real Elvis and you see young Elvis. That was cut 5 years before we made the movie. Not a frame was changed. So that's sort of how early we were working.
Wow.
Sorry, you interrupt.
No, I love hearing you talk.
Tell me more. Tell me more.
I just can't believe that, Austin. That you still, after all these years, like hearing Baz talk. You're a very kind man.
Hang on, you've been listening to him for 35 years. What's the problem?
Case in point. No, I still enjoy listening to you talk, and you still surprise me after all these years.
Well, CM, when Baz first brought you this, when he first told you he's going to make a movie about Elvis, what is your initial response, and how far along is he in the writing process when he starts having those conversations with you?
Well, he started, when we first met, he was very interested in the life of Elvis Presley and Elvis Presley as a cultural icon. and an American cultural beacon. I was less enamoured of Elvis Presley. I didn't quite see what he saw in him, to be honest. I am known as someone who's really bad at picking material. Baz will always joke that, you know, that I am the worst. Like, he'll have the best idea in the world, and I'll be like, really? Can skirts? See that? But luckily Baz perseveres, and he's an extremely persuasive storyteller. And when I think I really hooked into the story when Baz started talking about it as being a story about a relationship between two men, the manager, a sort of an unreliable narrator, and his protege Elvis, and that difficult and tortured relationship that brought many good things but also many bad things, and also the fact that it was a larger story than just a life story. It was actually being used to explore the decades of the 50s, the 60s and the 70s, and kind of a greater American experience, and you know, the difficult experience of segregation in the South, and Elvis's interaction with black music. And to me, that felt like a much more interesting and operatic story than just the life of one man. And you know, Baz is a really great storyteller, I think. You know,
I'm sorry, how are you going to get out of all that trouble? Yeah. Where were you last night? Well, actually.
And he, he starts to tell the story, and he'll tell you the whole thing with all the voices of the characters. Sometimes he leans in a bit too much on Priscilla, because he does like that role. But he also likes playing the Colonel with all of the Colonel's funny accents, which are true to life. If you listen to tapes, he spoke like that. And basically, Baz starts to tell the story, and then the audience broadens out with the creatives. So then Mandy will join, and he will tell her the story. And that is how the script, he rehearses the script by actually telling the story and working out in his own mind and with his trusted audiences what works for him. And then there's a constant conversation, I think, between his collaborators, which is why we really love working with him, because he will set you tasks, you know, on the process. He'll say, I'm thinking about this scene, these are my ideas, these are my drawings, these are my tear sheets, this is where I want you to explore this, bring me back visual materials that I can include in the script that respond to my first gesture. And it's a process of conversation, which is really great if you're a creative person.
And Mandy, you know, Baz was mentioning that you were there when he was doing these workshopping sessions with Austin. What kinds of things did you learn from those that informed your approach to the photography of the movie?
Well, I was exploring what Austin looked like on camera, you know, and the different angles, and because we'd had hair and makeup there and costume already, so I was looking at what different lenses looked like on him, because he was moving and he was dancing, and also just to look at the angles of his face to see where he looked most like Elvis, actually. And we started there, and then we started exploring more. I was doing research into the footage that we had to replicate in the movie, that existing footage of Elvis. So it's like the start of the process of that part of the visual language for me.
Can I really do not do this. I don't like go so direct. I'm reminded because if you go on my Instagram, there's amazing photos of Mandy and I that go back 20 years.
Yes.
And there's pictures of us in Australia, and I mean, I look the same old, but Mandy looks a lot younger, and I'm reminded. See what a great storyteller I am. I probably just destroyed a 20-year relationship. I mean, you still look young, but I mean, like, you look like a kid. But the point is that, what I really want to say is, let me cut to the chase. As they say in the editorial department, right? Like, it's not just that she had lenses made. Like, this is who Mandy Walker is. It's not just she had lenses made with her exact lenses that the 50s, 60s, and the 70s would have been shot in, or that she even worked out digitally and technically exactly the matching all those shots that are on YouTube and all of that, and that she just worked day and night, even putting cameras, modern cameras inside the TV cameras, so that she matched the angle. It's that she leads a gargantuan team of mainly blokes around the camera. And if I have one wish, and you know, I know award season and all that, sometimes it's your turn, sometimes it isn't, but wouldn't it just be nice that in 95 years a woman won?
Come on, Mandy.
Question I have for you, Mandy, but also for CM and for Baz. All of you, you know, Baz, you're a sort of general of this whole thing, and CM and Mandy, you're each commanding departments that I'm guessing on a movie of this size, you're talking hundreds of people. How do you all get those people to see the movie you're making when it's something this unique? How do you get everyone on the same page from the beginning?
Well, I was just going to say, I think one thing that Baz does is he gets us all involved very early on. And we have meetings together and we discuss and we all bring certain elements of our research that we've gone away and done. And there's always this constant discussion. And then I brought my team on very early too. Like my camera operators and grips and electrics came on to watch Austin rehearse and to learn the music, and that those sort of, we knew that these were huge tasks to be able to shoot this and to be able to replicate that footage exactly, and the lighting had to be the same and the camera angles had to be the same. And as I've said before, the three things that Baz said to me very early on about the way we're going to shoot the movie is that the camera has to dance with Austin. So it was, how am I going to get my team to be able to dance with him? How are we going to get him to feel comfortable with us on stage, and that there'll be cameras in his face all the time, there'll be cranes whooshing in towards him at a certain moment. And so it was that process of just constantly testing and rehearsing with him, but also just involving people really early on creatively in the process. And that's something that Baz does on every time I've worked with you, you know, that everybody's involved and everyone feels part of it. And they're you know, we were dancing with you, weren't we?
Sure were. No, I won't bang on about it, but if you go on my TikTok, you know, I'm the oldest guy on TikTok. Today there's footage of us shooting the Little Richard sequence, you know, right?
Yeah.
How great is Alton Mason? What you'll see is 4 camera guys. How heavy is the camera, man? In pounds?
About 30 pounds.
Yeah, 4 camera guys. But the middle camera person, you'll look down at the bottom of the frame, like you see us shooting it all, is Mandy with a 30-pound there, getting the key angle.
Wow.
Like, she picks up the camera a lot, you know? Okay, I'll stop doing it now.
Yeah, I think it's just a process of, it's with the crew, it's a slow burn. So it's not like the studio goes, great, you can just have unlimited prep and unlimited money. No, unfortunately. But we try to use the resources that we have in a really thought out way, so that all the key creatives get a lot of time to prep with Baz and decide. So when we start to add all of the really expensive elements in, we're all really as prepared as possible. And we have a lot of visual tools. So, you know, the visual storytelling of the movie will start with Baz, with gestures that he brings to the table, whether it's research material or little scribbles, drawings he does, or tear sheets, or, you know, he's even done some collages. scissors and glue that he's brought to the table. So it sort of starts with those images. And then we're constantly fleshing the script out. We kind of make a parallel visual script at the same time as the script, so that the visual script starts out as documentary images, you know, basically, or images that are inspirational, and we start telling, and as the design gets more and more kind of, you know, clearer in everyone's mind, that gets replaced with actual previs. It might get replaced with images that Mandy's brought to the table, of photographers that she thinks are important influences. And then by the time we get to just before shooting and the table read, we actually kind of have a document that when it's usually before or after the first table read, we have to get up and we present this document to everyone who's involved, the actors, everybody. It's like a book, a document, but we try and make all the material as available to everybody as possible.
But it's really worth adding, Sam, because we think it's normal, but I'm only discovering that it's not that usual. Like, Mandy and I take a lot of photos. Well, Sam's right. So, okay, there's an image on Gatsby, for example. There was the image of, thanks, 2 people saw it. I love it. But there's that image of the car and, you know, being hit by the lover, and Daisy's under Gatsby's arm, and the glass breaks and the pearls fly in the air. And actually, we sort of started with references like that. But at one stage, Mandy and I are always taking photos, and I just said, oh, look, I think it goes, I see, we've got this brilliant digital assistant called Chris Tang. He's been with us, he seems to be like he's 19, but I think he's been with us about 12 years or something. And anyway, he's an absolute genius at digital renderings. But I said, come out, and I cut out a picture of Leonardo's face that we had taken a photo of, put eyes in it, and put rope string around it, put it on Chris's face, got Sam to come out and sit in my Jag E-Type, which I no longer have, and I regret that, right? It's a sports car. Got them in there, got some string, put the pearls up in the air, and I took photos like that. And then they took it, and they put that into a digital rendering, which was photoreal of Leonardo. So it looked exactly like Leonardo was in it. And in fact, as a present for Gatsby, I got a photoreal painter friend of mine to do a painting of it and gave it to Leonardo. The only thing is he forgot to take Sam out from underneath Leonardo, so it's Leonardo and Sam in the car accident. But we get to a place where there are actual boards with the actors in it that look photoreal. Like, not all of them, but they're like a key look. So this is just kind of our progressive way, and it speaks to everything like that, you know?
Yeah, because everybody needs to know what's happening, because it's so difficult when you're in such a large group. So it's whatever it takes, like whether it's a digital model, like on Beale Street, because we built the 2 blocks, 1.5 stories. Like, we used it to work out sun paths for Mandy. We used it to work out, and it allowed us to, you know, move the shops around and work out exactly where he was going to walk. But at the same time, we made a white card model of it, because you need it to be on a table. When you've got 30 people standing around, it's much easier to discuss those things. So we try and share, don't we, as much as we can, and you know, make sure Mandy gets a chance, because she gets super busy when we're shooting, to come. We kidnap her and make her walk through the sets that are coming up, so she can have a chance to have input. So it's not the first time she's going to see it. Yeah, so it's trying to get as many people to know what's happening as is humanly possible.
And I think I just want to add to that a little bit, is that a lot of, because we shot in Australia, everything in the movie is a set that we built either on stage or on a backlot. And there was transitions between them, between Beale Street on a backlot to Club Handy on stage, or Graceland exterior to Graceland interior on stage. So we are also, with the help of Chris and Baz's drawings, we work out the transitions and how we moved from one set to another, so it looked like we were in the same location. It'd be seamless.
Yeah, and I had a co-production designer, Karen Murphy, and she was instrumental in, you know, at helping with lots of the geography, because Baz always wants, even if all the sets are on different stages, he wants to be able to explain to the actors. He didn't want you know, in the 68 special, you see Colonel Tom Parker running up and down stairs a lot. He wanted to make sure that he understood where he was going, where he was coming to and from. So we built, with Chris and Karen, digital models of how all those pieces fitted together so people understood, you know, where everything it was, and he knew where he was going, not just aimlessly running.
Mm.
Now, Andy, this movie seems to me like something that would be kind of a sound man's dream, but also extremely daunting. So what were your feelings coming into this, you know, having worked with Baz before? What did you see looming ahead of you as the big challenges, and what excited you about it?
Well, yeah, I mean, it was, yes. First time I watched it, it was very obvious that we were in for quite a ride here. I mean, the thing is that, well, look, for a start, when you watch Austin on the images here, I mean, it looks stunning. But what about the sound? What is his voice like? It's unbelievable to work with. It was so crystal clear and great and so powerful against the music. So I had lots of latitude to play with it. In the early scenes, particularly when we got into the real Elvis voice, which we did at the 68 comeback special, but up to that point in the film, it's all Austin. And
No,
absolutely. No, I mean, it really is the real deal. And then the weaving of the other pieces of music, or the contemporary pieces throughout the film. I knew, having worked with Baz on Moulin Rouge, what I so that was my trial run. Moulin Rouge was the trial run. This was the real deal. So it was a lot of fun. But I just want to say one thing, which is that, you know, looking at this screen, and you know, with Mandy and Baz and CM, everybody framed this film to be on a screen like this, and I certainly wanted the sound to be played in a room like this. So I want to say thank you for coming out on a Thursday night and seeing it the way it's supposed to be.
Yeah, I gotta say, just to add to what Andy's saying about the way we started on Moulin Rouge, this idea of what we call weaves and layers. And it's so complex I can't even begin to tell you, because like, you just take that one fly away sequence. One moment they say, now let's start to sing. And by the way, in my research, the little boy in that sequence, I mean, I found him as a 70-year-old man. And I have him on video telling me that story verbatim, of going to the juke joint and all those friends and living in one of the white houses in the black community, and the preacher grabbing a hand saying, leave him be, he is with the spirit, right? So it just goes to show, you know, no black music, no Elvis, and he lived in the environment. It was so important to convey that. But we were going to start the movie traditional form, but I thought you have to meet him just as he's going on stage. And when he got nervous, he really did sing gospel. He just got so nervous. And for the first time, he starts singing gospel. He flashes back, we go there, then we see him doing That's All Right Mama, and then we see the journey moving towards it is. But finally, bang, he's standing on the stage, and you reveal him. The amount of sonic layers in sound effects. I'll tell you what, we went with Dave Cobb and Austin into churches outside of Nashville with actual RCA recording devices and a real gospel choirs from down there. And Dave even recorded the stamping feet of everyone. And we had such a privilege, Austin and I, to be invited actually into, you know, this experience. And it was truly spiritual. But we recorded that, and then Andy had to layer that in with Austin singing over it and sound and so on and so forth. So I cannot overstate how complex that is.
He is a master. Like, if you look at this movie, if you look at Babylon, if you look at like just the stuff he's done this year, okay? He is a master at creating these really layered, complex soundtracks where there's a lot going on. In this movie, total chaos at times, and yet we always hear exactly what we're supposed to hear.
Yeah.
I mean, what's your secret, Andy? What is your secret?
Oh my God, what is my secret? Working with great directors. That's my secret. No, I mean, seriously, it's story. I watch the screen. Everything I need to learn is on the screen. I've always been really, really concerned that clarity is there, and I fight to keep that wherever I can. I think the spoken word is really important, and that's our foundation for any soundtrack. So I kind of just, a lot of it is taking things away rather than adding, because sometimes there's a, you know, you fill a screen like this visually, there's a tendency to want to fill it with sound. Sometimes you don't want to do that, and I think that's those choices that you have to make. So I guess that's the secret.
I mean, for what it's worth, I keep thinking, how does he do it all too? Like, I mean, you know, one of those a year would kill the normal person, right?
Yeah.
You know, so three. I mean, it doesn't know the market is, but he is a true master. He is a true master.
Austin, in terms of singing, you know, again, it seems like a very daunting idea to me. You're going to come into a movie and you're singing and you're playing Elvis.
There's no pressure at all.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, what was that experience like for you, just in terms of the sheer fear? I mean, how did you overcome it?
I mean, thankfully we had such a long time to prepare. So I had a year and a half before we started shooting. So I tried many things during that time. I worked with 5 different singing coaches during that time, and each person gave me something. You know, so some of it was just general singing technique, because I never sang in front of anybody before. I would only sing, I mean, I sang for my mother and you know, people very, very close to me, but I was always much too shy to do it in front of people. But it was moments like what Baz was just describing, being in that gospel tent. And I felt so fortunate to be there. Because in that moment, we're in this little church, this wooden church outside Nashville, and it was built in the 1800s or something. It's 30 of the most incredible gospel singers I'd ever heard. And when they started singing, it was so much more than just song. It was singing from their soul. And the stomping of the feet. And I've told this story before with Shannon, who led the congregation. He said, today we're not just making a movie. We're not just recording songs. He said, somebody that I love very much might not be alive when we get out of here. They were in the hospital at that point. And he said, so I got something to wail about. And I know all you got something to wail about too. So let's wail together. And they started singing these songs that are in the film. And I got to stand in the center of this for 8 hours and just stomp my feet, and tears are pouring down my face and chills are going down my spine. And it taught me so much about movement, about what dance actually is, where you can't help but move to music when your soul is stirred in that way, but also when you're singing from your soul. And so it was moments like that where I always knew that if I wasn't, because there's so many technical things, you know, I would spend days and weeks obsessing about the way that Elvis sang one word, and I would just try to figure out how he, you know, his certain vocal mannerisms, and then how that changed over time, you know, because his voice changed a lot from 1942, and so it was a lot of those technical things, but then that core that I felt in that gospel church, that was my Northern Star. I knew if I wasn't feeling that, so yeah, and then it was just relishing in the process and trying to keep the outcome out of my mind as much as possible, because if I focused on that too much, I would think the fear of, if this movie comes out and it doesn't go well, then I'll never work again as an actor. You know? That's what it felt like. So I just had to keep that at bay as much as possible. But that's the thing with Baz is, I mean, you've talked about this a lot, but how the environment that he creates and the entire team here is we all know that fear is a part of the equation, but as much as you can create a safe space that you can actually play, that's the environment that they all create. And so I got to live in that and then push myself to the very edge of and past what I thought was possible.
I've been talking about the film for 9 months, so I feel like my therapy session is about to come to an end. But I really want to say this genuinely. I mean, I've made quite a bit now, you know. And I've worked in theatre, and I've worked, you know, in teaching and all sorts of things. And I think I'll look back at this, but I mean, it's like what Priscilla said, who I met early on, and then we lost contact, and she was getting quite vocal about it, like everyone was. I mean, I think Austin not only had to deal with just the fear of the work and the fear of the outcome, but there was a lot of energy out there going, you are going to fail. There's just no way. It's impossible. This is a role, this never went, no one went, it's a role of a lifetime. They just went, I mean, to quote another member of the Presley family, I'll never forget that, she says, it was just disappointment after disappointment. And that noise was around us. Thankfully, we were in Australia, so we could keep some of it away. But the enormity of that pressure, because, and I knew pretty early on that we had it. Like, what I meant was, it was only about Austin's, like, it was a role of a lifetime, and he absolutely gave his life to it. And I know in my life I'll see extraordinary performances again, but I have to say here and now, which I've never seen before, I know I will never see the likes of what Austin created in terms of young. When she said it, she writes me an email after seeing it, and she went and said, I know it's really hard on you. She said, I actually don't know how he achieved that. It's some kind of miracle. She said, forget the moves and the blah, blah, blah. You've got to remember, my husband was the most impersonated person on the planet.
Yeah.
This is not an impersonation.
Yeah.
And what I want to know is, how did he know the secret things? Like Elvis's rage or his inner quietness. And there's a scene where Austin, the colonel says, or I will leave you. And Austin looks at the colonel and he goes, Let me tell you something. I had to say, I don't know how he knew to do that. In fact, how did you know to do that? You can tell us.
These things are hard for me to quantify, you know, because it was such a long process, and it's so hard to put my finger on certain things.
You're in the moment. That's the thing. You are him.
And that was the thing.
You was channeling Elvis. I actually wasn't.
Yeah, I mean, that's the closest thing that I can say, because they were definitely, they were the big key things that gave me his humanity. And then there's all these, then it was just like, I felt like I was a detective for months and months. It was just finding these little keys that suddenly made me connect to that humanity. And then it sparked something in my imagination, or it sparked something in my own experiences in life. And then at a certain point, it all just started to blur. And it just started to blend, where I wasn't having to consciously think of these things, or wasn't having to consciously think of the physical part of him or anything. And then it was just responding. And suddenly at that point, I mean, on a scene like that, I didn't think about doing that. It just was, it just felt like how I would respond to those, you know. So.
I got to quickly add one thing I'll do. Some of you might have heard me say this, but this is the more extraordinary side of that. Sure, rehearse. I think what Oz is saying, for anyone interested in the actual craft of acting, is that he was a detective, and then he actually did the work, then he actually lived it, and then he literally, there was a time when the producer had to go and say, Oz, you have to back off. You're going to break. And then we lost the movie, and then he refused to leave Australia, and then he kept working, and he tells a story about being in a beautiful mine with pictures all over his wall, locked up, screaming into the ocean, and people wanting to arrest him because there's a madman down at the beach. Anyway, he's doing it, but he gets to a point where I think he blends the soul with shooting. And yeah, there's script, but there's a sequence, because I had to look at it today, where Elvis is like G'ing up, we're going to make the big sound, okay, boom, let's do this, and making the new That's All Right Mama for Vegas, and we rehearsed it to a playback for 18 months. And I go to shoot it, nothing. It just wasn't working. It wasn't working. And I said, Austin, and he said, I know it's not working. It just doesn't feel real. And I said, look, they're actually all real musicians. We can take out the silencers. They can play the brass. You can play the drums, and you're Elvis. Yeah. Just do it for real. He said, can I have a minute? I said, take two. You know? I didn't know he went through it, but anyway. And then he comes back, and he comes back as Elvis. I turn on the cameras, we have multi-cams. And I said, the only direction I'm going to give you, or only feel I'm going to give you, is you're Elvis. And what would Elvis do until he finally got James Burton to get that guitar? And he does it a few times, and he goes, that's it, James. And Austin just improvised. Flames, I want to see flames. And go up the altar, just improvised it. So what you see on screen is Austin channeling Elvis and doing real music.
Yeah. Okay.
You got 3 minutes next time.
Take 2.
I think we've got time to take an audience question or two if anybody's got one. Gosh. Let's see. Straight there. Yep.
Hi. First, congratulations, and it's so beautiful to see the love between you all and the respect. It really passed you over here. For Austin, talking about the accents and changing the voice, which is an incredible work, and not only doesn't film, in sequence. So did you some days have to have the voice and the accent of a certain period of his life, and like the next day a total different one?
Yeah, absolutely. So I remember one of the first times Baz and I, after I had the part where we talked, and it was us and Patrick McCormick, our other producer, and you guys were saying, I think we're going to be able to film this chronologically. At that time, I thought that's a fantastic idea, because I can age with Elvis in that moment. But then with COVID and everything, that quickly went out the window. So then it did mean that I would be. I mean, we started in '68, and then we went to '56, and then went to '70, and then '76, and back to '56, and so it was. Thankfully, I had so much time. So, and that's why. I mean, the insanity that I talk about of wallpapering my entire apartment with this timeline of Elvis's life. That was the reason for that. Was I knew that I was gonna have to have these ways in which I could click into Elvis at 19, and then maybe 42 the next day, and then go back to him at 35 or whatever that was. And his voice did change so much over that time, his speaking and singing voice. So then I had key recordings and footage, and then there's these great resources. There's this great book that Ernst Jorgensen did called Elvis Day by Day. That is, it's literally Elvis's life day by day. Elvis got his dry cleaning done this day. And so you could go and look, in 1962, what did he do on Tuesday, the 17th of November or something? I don't know if that's an actual date, but that sort of thing. You can go and look at this book. So that helped me to, because it's about finding where he is spiritually at that point, what his fears are, what his hopes are, all of those. What are his dreams that day? What's his love life like? All those questions. And so being able to click into that every day, because that changes the way that you speak, and it changes the way that you move and everything. So that was my trick. No, it's not me having issues.
Yeah.
Hi. Hey.
Hey, what's your name?
Natalie.
Hey, Natalie.
Hi, thanks. I remember when Selma Hayek did Frida, and she said when she first brought it to the studios, they said she couldn't do it for a few years, and she says, well, I guess you're going to have to wait till I get older, because there was this need in her to bring this character out. So when you sort of heard about the project, and you were, a friend said you should do it, blah, 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 was it a want, a desire, a need to bring this character to life, or in doing the research and your beautiful mind, all that pinpointing and being specific, did that grow to a need? And what was the need in Austin Butler, the actor, to say, I can do this, I have to do this?
That is such a good question. And, need is the perfect word. It was like being sucked into a gravitational pull that I could not escape. And it was really from day one. It was as soon as I heard Baz was making the film, because of those 2 moments in the month leading up to that, where my partner at the time said, "You got to play Elvis." It just, and the idea was even, I mean, the idea of getting to play and live the life of somebody as dynamic as Elvis Presley is the type of thing I've always wanted to do as an actor. It's the type of challenge that feels nearly impossible. And any times that there's something that feels that challenging, that's the thing that I've ended up being guided by. But then it was researching him and learning about, I mean, when I learned that detail about his mom passing away at 23, and that's exactly the same age I was, it was things like that where I just thought, there's too many intricacies here. It's so serendipitous in a way that's beyond the stars aligning, and so I just gave over to that really, and it was like because I knew that it would change me as a person.
So you can almost say sometimes in life things find us.
Yeah.
So this found you.
I think that's right. My take on it, people say, oh, how did you find Austin?
Yeah.
I think he found us. It's in the same way they found each other. He and Elvis found each other. And I know it starts to seem like spiritual talk outside the work and all that, whatever your conceptions are. But there's definitely on another level here, like that I cannot actually explain. And I really
It just is.
Unfortunately, we're out of time, but I have a huge favor to ask.
It's just getting fun.
I have a huge favor to ask everyone, which is they have to clear the theater, so please stay in your seats until the panel leaves. They can't do signing and pictures and all that, but I want to thank all of you for coming and talking about the movie.
Thank you.